Hello crafty friends, it's Alicia here with a project for Tailored Expressions. In today's video, I'm going to be using products from the new summer release to create a merMADE card. From the latest release, I'll be using the Beach Babe set as well as the Gnome Alone dies, which now allow you to make single gnomes. I'm so excited. For my sentiment, I'll be using the Hello Sunshine stamp set with coordinating dies, and to create a sunshiny background, I'll be using Here Comes the Sun stencil. The main cardstocks I'm using today are confetti cake, jelly donut, pineapple, candy corn, and sugar cube. I'll also be throwing in some scraps of toffee and cinnamon. For my inks, they're just about the same, confetti cake, jelly donut, pineapple, candy corn, but then I'll be using Oreo. To create my own sparkly cardstock, I'll be using Versamark ink with the Diamond Embossing Powder and of course my Sizzix heat tool. I got out the Teal Misty and Just Press tool to help with stamping. And I'll be using a variety of adhesives to hold everything together. Let's get crafty! I'm going to start by ink blending some confetti cake and jelly donut inks on a scrap of confetti cake, which I cut so it would be just a little bit bigger than the mermaid tail and Beach Babe swimsuit. I'm going to start by adding some confetti cake toward the bottom of the scrap, trying to get a darker shade at the bottom and fading out kind of like an ombre look to the top. Now you could definitely use sugar cube cardstock for this, but I like to start with that confetti cake base so I can use less ink and less blending. The reason I chose these colors is when I think of a mermaid, I always think of like blue and purple shiny scales, so I thought making this ombre kind of blue-purple cardstock would work perfect for the tail and swimsuit. I'm going to do almost the same exact thing with the jelly donut ink, and for this I do want to concentrate the most purple toward the bottom so that the mermaid tail will have some blue as well as the swimsuit. I like to use counterclockwise and clockwise motions and just kind of go in circles and fade out to the top. Let us know in the comment section below what colors make you think of mermaids. For the next step, I pre-cut a piece of pineapple cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I will be adding the rays from the Here Comes the Sun stencil. To hold my cardstock in place, I put some adhesive on the back, and to hold my stencil in place, I'll be using some Post-it removable tape. Now I do only use 2 pieces right now, but later you'll see I add a couple more just to hold the stencil down firmly. I try to get it so the center circle was centered left to right and a little bit more toward the bottom. Just like with my mermaid scale paper, I'm going to be starting with tone-on-tone ink blending with that pineapple ink. For this, I wanted to go all the way from the center to the outside with the pineapple, and I did concentrate a little bit more of the ink toward the middle. Then when I peeked at it and thought I had a good layer of yellow on there, I brought in the candy corn ink and did the same thing, but this time I didn't go quite as far out. I concentrated the orange more toward the center of the sun rays. Once I thought I had good coverage with both inks, it's time for my favorite part, the reveal. Now let's add some sparkle to that cardstock with the Versamark ink and Diamond Embossing Powder. This part is super simple. I just open up my ink pad and just smoosh that right onto the cardstock I had just created. Once that was nice and inky, I poured my powder over the entire thing, and I did just try to keep my finger in one area so there's just a little bit that wouldn't have the shine. I did pour the powder on a couple times just to ensure I got more of the glittery from that embossing powder onto the piece of paper. Then I brought in my heat tool, which I let heat up for probably 30 seconds off camera and got that melted. And here's a look at my specialty cardstock I just created. Let me know if you've ever done this in the comment section below. I arranged the mermaid tail and swimsuit pieces onto the cardstock I created, and I did make sure to leave all the pieces away from the small part that didn't get the glittery embossing. I held these all in place with the same removable tape I used for stenciling, and here's a look at my shiny mermaid pieces. Also, while I was off camera, I cut the rest of my Beach Babe accessories as well as Gnome Alone. For the body, I used Toffee Cardstock, and for the coconut, I used a scrap of cinnamon. The rest of the cardstocks are ones I mentioned earlier, and for my sandals, I decided to use some of the scrap that was left over from my swimsuit and tail to add a little more sparkle. To assemble my gnome, I will be using Barely Art liquid glue, and I'll also bring in some tweezers later for a little help. As I was assembling her, I tried to do it in sections. Things that were layered together I did first, like the feet with the sandals and the body with the hair, and I let everything dry in between underneath a clear block. Now I'm using the liquid glue because that's going to give me a little wiggle time to adjust things when I need it. For the little coconut drink and the accessories, there is an actual slit in the cup where you can slip in the straw and the umbrella. For that, I would put just a little bit of glue on the front of the umbrella stem and the straw, and then push it down through there and hold it until it had dried. Once that first layer of everything was done, I started adding the swimsuit, and for this I put on the bottoms first, and then for the top, I had left my hair not glued down the little curls at the bottom, so I was able to just slip that on. And then of course, every mermaid needs their tail, but in this case it's a hat on my Beach Babe, and I got that added. After she had had time to dry, I added one of her hands to the coconut drink and one of them to her torso. I want to pop up the coconut drink later, so I'm not going to adhere that, but you definitely could if you wanted to. Off camera, I added some foam sticky strips to the back of the drink, and I prepped a top fold candy corn card base. I also cut down my stencil piece to 4 by 5 1/4. Now that most of the parts are ready, I can start assembling the card. To do this, I put adhesive on the back of the stencil piece and place that flat down onto the center of the card base. I'm going to use that same adhesive on the back of the gnome just to keep it nice and flat for now, and I got her placed right in the center. Finally, I pulled the release paper from the coconut drink and popped that up off to her right. The card still needs a sentiment, so that's what I did next. I will be using the Hello Sunshine stamp from the set and stamping it in Oreo ink onto a scrap of sugar cube. I thought that this sentiment went very well with the background that I created. I got it set up on the scrap, making sure to leave enough room to die cut it later, and I did ink it up and stamp it twice with Oreo just to get a nice solid black. I took this piece off camera with the coordinating die to cut it out, and I added some foam sticky strips to the back, again for a little dimension. Also, while I was off camera, I cut a piece of white cardstock for the inside, and I cleaned off my brushes on the bottom using the stencil that I used on the front. I just like the way this brings a little more color and interest to the inside of the card. After I pulled the release paper on the foam tape strips, I brought in the Barely Art glue again and put some right on the back. This is going to give me some time to wiggle and maneuver the sentiment so it's nice and straight across. I put a clear block on this and let it dry off camera, and also while I was off camera, I added some drip drops to the front for a little more shine. And here are some close-up looks at the finished card. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. If you enjoyed the process, a thumbs up is appreciated. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do hope you'll click on the button below so you're the first to know about our latest videos. To find out more about the products I used today, you can check out the links in the description box below or visit the Tailored Expressions online store at tailoredexpressions.com.